What started out as a disagreement based on mutual respect gradually escalated into a public verbal battle, which culminated in infamous altercations at events. Their conflict served as a symbol for many years of the widening gap that existed between the old generation of rock and the grunge scene's unfiltered authenticity. However, now, some 30 years later, Axl Rose has revealed information about Kurt Cobain and Nirvana in a manner that Nirvana fans did not anticipate. His surprise insights have shed new light on their relationship and what actually occurred during their heated rivalry, which had been kept secret for decades. Well, let's find out. At the beginning of the 1990s, Guns N' Roses and Nirvana represented two rock music genres that were radically different from one another. The huge success of albums such as Appetite for Destruction, which was released in 1987, and Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, which were released in 1991, propelled Guns N' Roses to the pinnacle of their professional career. Whether it was through their wild live performances or their reputation for heavy partying, the band exemplified the very essence of rock excess during the 1980s. Axl Rose, the band's frontman, was a larger-than-life figure who was famous for his fiery attitude, provocative interviews, and commanding presence on stage. On the other side, Nirvana was driving a seismic cultural revolution in the music industry at the time. He freely embraced the rock star lifestyle, claiming at one point, "I'm not here to be anybody's role model, I'm here to play music my way." The release of their album, Nevermind, in 1991, had propelled them to the forefront of worldwide superstardom, and Kurt Cobain had emerged as the reluctant spokesperson for the grunge movement, thanks to the album. The philosophy that Cobain adhered to was completely dissimilar to that of Axl Rose. Instead of embracing the materialism and hedonism that were prevalent in rock music throughout the 1980s, he instead advocated for authenticity, vulnerability, and emotional rawness in his music as well as in his life. "It is not my intention to become a rock god. I just want to make music that matters," Cobain famously declared. Tensions between their worlds were unavoidable. These tensions were inevitable. At the beginning, Axl was a fan of Nirvana, and he frequently praised the band's music. Not only did he wear a Nirvana cap on stage during Guns N' Roses concerts, but he also referred to Nevermind as the best album of the year several times during interviews, even going so far as to extend an invitation to Nirvana to serve as the opening act for Guns N' Roses on their tour in 1992, a move that appeared to be a sign of respect at first appearance. Cobain and Nirvana, on the other hand, rebuffed Axl's invitation in a manner that was not subdued, but rather with public disdain. The invitation was rejected by Cobain when he was questioned about it. He referred to Guns N' Roses as macho posturing and empty-headed rock bullshit. According to a famous quote attributed to Kurt Cobain, "We're not going to play with those idiots." Guns N' Roses, in Cobain's opinion, represented the very culture of excess and vanity that grunge was fighting against. The snub was obviously offensive to Axl, who was not the type of person to hold back in most situations. He felt as if he was being attacked on a personal level, and it was more than just a rejection of the offer. In addition to adding gasoline to the fire, Courtney Love, who is married to Kurt Cobain, made it clear that she disdains Guns N' Roses. She stirred the pot by referring to Axl Rose as the most egotistical musician in the music industry. Cobain did not make any effort to tone down these remarks, and as a result, he effectively positioned himself and Nirvana as the antithesis of everything that Axl Rose and Guns N' Roses came to represent. Fans and pundits alike started to view the rivalry as more than just a conflict between two bands. Rather, they began to perceive it as a symbolic conflict between the opulence of glam music from the 1980s and the raw, stripped-down ethos of grunge from the 1990s. As the tensions between them continued to rise, it was only a matter of time before their ideological differences began to boil over into full-blown hostility. The emotions that had been building up between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain reached a spectacular boiling point on September 9, 1992, when they were both present at the MTV Video Music Awards. Guns N' Roses and Nirvana were both at the pinnacle of their fame at the time, and the fact that they were both there at the same high-profile event created the conditions for a clash that was unavoidable. The event became notorious not because of the awards themselves, but rather because of the explosive altercation that took place behind the scenes between the two heavy metal icons. According to reports, the drama started when Courtney Love yelled at Axl Rose in a mocking manner as he came by backstage. She reportedly teased him by asking, "Axl, will you be the godfather of my child?" Frances Bean Cobain, the daughter of Cobain and Love, had been born earlier that year, and it was obvious that the phrase was meant to be a joke. On the other hand, Axl was not amused. It was after this confrontation that he turned to Kurt and yelled, "You shut your bitch up or I'm taking you down." This turned out to be one of the most iconic moments of the rivalry. Those who were present were taken aback by the comment, and the developing hostility that existed between the two rock stars was exposed for all to understand. Rather than becoming enraged, Kurt chose to alleviate the situation by employing a sarcastic sense of humor, which only served to make the situation even more uncomfortable. He gave Courtney a scornful smile and then added, "Okay, Courtney, you need to be quiet." All of the members of the Nirvana team burst out laughing, while the Guns N' Roses crew was fuming. Something that could have been a one-off incident instead became the impetus for a full-blown dispute that would dominate the news for several weeks during that time period. It was not the end of the confrontation at last. As the evening progressed, members of Nirvana and Guns N' Roses came into contact with one another once more, which resulted in additional conflict. After engaging in intense conversation behind the scenes, Duff McKagan, the bassist for Guns N' Roses, and Chris Novoselic, the bassist for Nirvana, came dangerously close to coming to blows with each other. The tension remained throughout the entire event, and security had to intervene to separate the two individuals. In the meantime, Nirvana entered the stage for their legendary performance of Lithium. Yet, even that performance was not devoid of any controversy. As a not-so-subtle barb at Axl Rose and Guns N' Roses, bassist Chris Novoselic purposefully played erroneous notes at the opening bars of the song. Dave Grohl further agitated Axl from the stage by repeatedly yelling into the microphone, "Hi, Axl," as the band's performance came to a close. "How are you, Axl?" Much to the delight of the audience members. On the other side, Axl Rose and Guns N' Roses performed later that evening, although the atmosphere backstage remained highly tense throughout the entire performance. Following the event, Axl publicly blasted Nirvana during interviews, describing them as disrespectful and accusing Kurt of being a privileged fake punk who makes an excessive effort to appear cool. In addition to this, he stated that the antics of Kurt and Courtney were not worthy of the prestige that real rock stars possess. The same can be said for Cobain, who did not hold back whatsoever. He further expressed his disgust for Axl by saying, "I can't even believe we're in the same industry." This statement was made in an interview that took place immediately after the MTV Awards. The person exemplifies everything that I am attempting to steer clear of. Within the realm of music, there is no room for an ego like his. After that, he went on to say that the style of rock that Guns N' Roses played was harmful to culture, and that it was nothing more than senseless hostility covered in makeup. As a result of the MTV Video Music Awards, the public's image of their feud as being more than just a disagreement over creative choices was strengthened. At this point, it was a full-scale confrontation of personalities and egos that was taking place on the most prominent stage in the world. Fans and journalists swiftly took sides, with some defending Axl's passionate adherence to traditional rock and others agreeing with Kurt's raw honesty and disgust for the excesses of the industry. Some fans and journalists defend Axl's dedication to traditional rock. After the untimely passing of Kurt Cobain in 1994, the intensity of the antagonism that existed between Axl Rose and Nirvana ceased to exist. Axl did not make any big statements regarding Kurt Cobain or Nirvana in the years immediately following his death, despite the fact that they had a public dispute with each other. In spite of the fact that their feud had been the subject of news during the early 1990s, its sudden conclusion served as a sobering reminder of the responsibility that comes with fame and the vulnerability of individuals who are in the spotlight. Axl Rose himself started to develop throughout the course of the years that passed. The fiery and divisive rock icon, who had once personified the wild excess of 1980s music, began to take a more introspective approach to his work and public presence. He had once been the embodiment of the wild excess of rock. His notorious outbursts grew less frequent, and he returned his attention to music, despite the fact that he left Guns N' Roses for extended periods of time and faced difficulties with the band. Through the passage of time and the passage of distance, Axl began to contemplate his position within the music industry. For the most part, he refrained from rekindling conflicts from the past, particularly his rivalry with Kurt Cobain. The fact that Axl Rose publicly and openly discussed his feelings on Nirvana and Kurt Cobain came as a surprise to his following. In a rare interview that took place not too long ago, Rose candidly stated that he had failed to properly comprehend the influence that Nirvana had during the height of their competition. He stated, "I can now see how their music significantly altered everything. In a manner that very few bands ever do, Kurt had a gift, and Nirvana was able to mold an entire generation." He spoke in a tone that conveyed admiration and understanding, which had been lacking during their public confrontations that had occurred some decades ago. Following this, Rose went on to discuss the origin of their quarrel, implying that it was less about personal animosity and more about the immense expectations of popularity and creative identity that existed during that time period. "We were all children trying to make sense of the situation. Others of us battled, and others of us fled away from the fighting," he added, alluding to the inner agony that both he and Cobain probably experienced as a result of their dramatically different positions in the music scene. Perhaps the most startling feature of Axl's perspective was the fact that he was willing to praise Nirvana's influence on culture in general. He referred to the grunge movement as a seismic shift that caused many of us to reevaluate our conceptions of what rock could truly be. In spite of the fact that he recognized that he did not have a complete understanding of Kurt Cobain as a person, he expressed real appreciation for the talent of Cobain, describing him as inventive and recognizing that Nirvana was instrumental in redefining rock music for a new generation. When compared to the verbal battle that took place between Rose and Nirvana in the 1990s, Rose's comments were a significant departure. At the same time, it revealed an older and more self-aware version of the rock legend, someone who had matured beyond previous frustrations and came to realize the worth of what Nirvana represented not only to music, but to an entire cultural period. This unexpected perspective from Axl Rose left many fans surprised, not only because it brought an end to a feud that had been going on for decades, but also because it revealed the humanity that lies beneath one of the most contentious individuals in rock music. Through introspection and comprehension, it was demonstrated that even the most vehement disagreements may be resolved with the passage of time. Even after several decades have passed, the rivalry that existed between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain continues to be one of the most famous confrontations in the history of rock music. This is not just due to the personal conflicts that occurred, but also due to the significance that it held for the music industry. The recent comments made by Axl about Nirvana and Kurt Cobain shed light on the wider impact of their competition and how it characterized a significant shift in the music industry. The grandiose, larger-than-life spectacle of hard rock in the 1980s and the stripped-down, introspective realism of grunge in the 1990s were two of the contrasting forces that Guns N' Roses and Nirvana had personified in the realm of rock music. Kurt Cobain's adamant rejection of beauty and popularity was in direct opposition to Axl Rose's embracing of rock stardom. Nonetheless, it is ironic that both men were profoundly impacted by the pressures that come with fame. Axl demonstrated his uneasiness with success through his erratic conduct, turbulent relationships, and extended absences from the public spotlight, in contrast to Kurt, who frequently expressed his unhappiness with success in an open manner. In his later reflections, when he was 63 years old, Axl acknowledged how much the rise of Nirvana constituted a turning moment in rock music, not only for him personally, but also for the culture as a whole. They brought about a shift for each and every one of us. It wasn't only the sound. He recognized that it was the mindset that was the problem. After years of animosity, during which Axl had frequently criticized Nirvana and Cobain's approach to music as anti-rock and pretentious, this acknowledgement finally came about. It is also interesting to note that Axl admitted the possibility that their public competition may have been exacerbated by external factors, including the expectations of their respective fan bases and the media. He made a note of the fact that the music press enjoyed exacerbating the animosity between the two by pitting them against each other. He acknowledged that it wasn't only we who were fueling it. Around that time, everyone was eager to watch us compete, and we did not disappoint them by putting on a show. Rose, on the other hand, expressed regret for the manner in which he had handled matters in the past. In the same interview, he admitted that we were reacting rather than thinking because we were so young. However, he did not apologize directly for everything that had happened. There is a possibility that the outcomes would have been different if I had been older. The comment that hinted at a degree of regret regarding how personal the fight had gotten, particularly in light of Kurt's untimely death, struck a chord with fans, since it suggested that the feud had become more personal. As Axl reflected on the passing of Kurt Cobain, he remarked that it brought an abrupt stop to a relationship that had the potential to develop into mutual respect in the future. We were so engrossed in the particulars that we failed to see the bigger picture. Despite the fact that I did not know him personally, I am now able to understand what he was fighting for, and I am able to appreciate that. He was attempting to safeguard something that was unadulterated. It was not only the comments of Axl that brought attention to the value of Kurt Cobain's achievements to the music industry, but they also demonstrated the toll that fame took on each of them in their own unique ways. The challenges that Kurt faced proved to be insurmountable, in contrast to Axl, who was able to weather the storm of his own career and rebuild himself and Guns N' Roses many years later. To this day, fans continue to speculate about what may have transpired if Axl and Kurt had been able to establish a mutual understanding rather than engaging in conflict. Is it possible that they would have worked together, impacted each other's musical styles, or perhaps rewritten the story of rock history together? These are questions that have not yet been answered, but Axl's recent musings provide at least an insight into how he now thinks about their competition from a personal standpoint. Despite the fact that it was a high-profile conflict between two of rock's best frontmen, the dispute between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain was more than just one fight. A transition from the bombastic rock culture of the 1980s to the raw, emotional honesty of the 1990s was represented by this event, which served as a symbol of a shift in the musical landscape. Fans felt that their animosity brought to life the tension that existed between these two opposing eras, which made their rivalry not only culturally significant, but also profoundly emotional. Recent musings on Kurt Cobain and Nirvana by Axl Rose, who is now 63 years old, offer a fresh viewpoint on this feud that was once a source of explosive tension. The passage of time and the wisdom that comes with age are brought to light by his admission of Nirvana's influence and his reverence for the creativity of Kurt Cobain. Rose stated that Kurt possessed a talent and that Nirvana created a generation. These words are a striking contrast to the furious accusations and dismissive remarks that were made during their earlier fight. They demonstrate how the rivalry has progressed from resentment to acknowledgement throughout the course of their relationship. The struggle that Kurt Cobain had with fame and his own personal issues was considerably more significant than the competition that he had with Axl Rose. In spite of this, when viewed in hindsight, their feud served as a symbol of the challenges he encountered as an artist who was attempting to remain true to his principles in a field that was fascinated with image and extravagance. Despite the fact that they consumed him, those same conflicts ultimately gave Cobain the reputation of being a paragon of artistic integrity. It is not because they collaborated that Kurt Cobain and Axl Rose's identities are entwined today. Rather, it is because their dispute brought to light the positive and negative aspects of rock culture. Axl's survival and eventual metamorphosis proved the resiliency of rock heroes who refused to be defined by a single era. Cobain's premature death solidified his image as a martyr for the grunge generation, while Axl's survival and transition demonstrated those same traits. Despite the fact that Axl Rose is still performing and contemplating his legacy, the fact that he has developed a fresh perspective on Kurt Cobain is evidence of his maturation and comprehension. In spite of the fact that fans will never know what would have occurred if the two had reconciled, Axl's acknowledgement of Nirvana's influence and Kurt Cobain's brilliance provides a sense of resolution to a rivalry that seemed to have been impenetrable in the past. It is a reflection of the pressures, egos, and philosophies that created two of the most important voices in the history of music, that the feud between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain continues to be an iconic story in the world of rock music. It was demonstrated by their quarrel that legends can define generations even when they are in conflict. When Axl now looks back with the kind of appreciation that only time can bring, he realizes that the competition is not a symbol of division. Rather, it is an eternal legacy of two musicians who permanently changed the face of music.